Welcome to Nitakis. My name is Mrs. Rama. This video I have prepared for the grade 12s to help them with their final exam preparation. In this video, I'm going to look at the Mpumalanga Prelim 2020 Paper 1. Right. Give the correct biological term for each of the following descriptions. Write down only the term next to the question number in the answer book. 1-1. What is the hormone that stimulates oogenesis? Now, we know the hormone that stimulates oogenesis is follicle-stimulating hormone. Right. 1-2. The period of development of the fetus until birth, we know as gestation. 1-3. A structure in the female reproductive system where semen is deposited. That, vagina. 1-4. The branch outgrowth of a neuron that transmits nerve impulses to the cell body of the same neuron. That is dendrites. 1-5. The growth movement of part of a plant in response to gravity, geotropism. 1-6. A hormone that regulates the salt balance in the body, aldosterone. The branch of the nervous system that consists of cranial and spinal nerves, peripheral nervous system. The type of vision which both eyes are used together to focus on an object, binocular vision. 1-9. A part of the brain that regulates the temperature, hypothalamus. And 1-10, the liquid or a liquid between the cornea and the lens in the human eye, aqueous humor. 1.3. Indicate whether each of the statements in column 1 applies to A only, B only, both A and B, or none of the items in column 2. Write A only, B only, both A and B, or none next to the question number in the answer book. 131. What is the hormone secreted by the pituitary gland? Now you know, aldosterone is secreted by the adrenal gland and growth hormone is secreted by the pituitary gland, so your answer is B only. 132. The presence of an umbilical cord. Umbilical cord, we know all viviparous organisms have an umbilical cord, ovipary, none. So your answer is A only. 133. The release of the ovum from the ovary, we know is known as ovulation, not the ovarian cycle. So your answer is A only. And 134. The shedding of the uterine lining, which is accompanied by bleeding. That we know as menstruation and not menstrual cycle. So your answer is A only. 141. But before we look at 141, let's look at the diagrams below represents organisms with different reproductive strategies. 141. Which diagrams 1, 2, or 3 represents the organisms where external fertilization takes place? Now you can see here, there is already external fertilization taking place. So it's diagram 1. Now 141b, where the extraembryonic membranes develop to assist with the protection and nutrition of the embryo. That we can see it's diagram 2 and 3. And then C, which of these organisms in diagram 1, 2, and 3 are oviparous? Oviparous are egg-laying, so you can see it's definitely diagram 1 and 2. 142. Name the type of egg produced by the organism represented in diagram 2. We know there's only one type of egg, the amniotic egg. 1.5. Give the letter and name of the part that contracts to change the shape of the lens. Letter and name. That contracts, so we know muscles contract and relax. So that answer is A, because that's where the ciliary muscle is. A, ciliary muscle, as they ask for the letter and the name. Then B, give the letter and the name of the part that controls the amount of light that enters the eye. The amount of light that enters the eye, we know that is the pupil that does this, but it's the iris that controls the pupil. And so the iris is C, iris. Give the letter name of the part that is protected by the conjunctiva. We can see that that is obviously D, the cornea. 152. Study diagram 1 and 2. What process is responsible for the change of the shape of part E? We know part E is the lens. When the lens changes shape, that is accommodation. 153. Which diagram 1 or 2 represents the state of a person when reading a book? Reading a book, we know the lens is always more convex. That's diagram 2. Right. Question 2. 2.1. 2.1.1. Identify part C. Part C, we know, is the centromere. Part D is the place where the chromosomes are touching, the chiasma or chiasmata. Identify part E. That's pointing to the homologous chromosomes or the bivalent. Here the memo accepts chromosome pair as well. D. Identify part F. It's pointing to the chromatid. Here the memo still accepted sister chromatid. 212. Name two ways in which structures A and B are similar to one another. So these are homologous chromosomes. So they have the same shape, they have the same centromeres, they're the same size, and they have the same gene composition. Any two. 213. Describe the process taking place at D. At D, that is crossing over. So what takes place at crossing over? So in prophase 1, the non-sister chromatids or one chromatid in each homologous chromosomes pair, they touch at a place called the chiasma, and then exchange, and then genetic material is exchanged or swapped at the chiasma. 214. A certain species has 42 chromosomes in its muscle cells. Give the number of chromosomes in the sperm cell, which will be half, 21. Give the number of the chromosomes in the skin cells, which is diploid, 42. And give the number of chromosomes in the ova of each counterpart, also 21. Right. 2.2. Study the diagrams below showing the male and female reproductive systems. 2.2.1. Identify parts A. A, we know, can you see? It's the vas deferens that enters the penis. That's the urethra. B is pointing to, of course, we just said it, the vas deferens and the sperm duct. C is pointing to the prostate gland. E is pointing to the uterus. F is pointing to the fallopian tube or the oviduct. And G is pointing to the ovary. 2.2.2. State one function of each of the following. The fluid produced by C. Now, where are we? C is the prostate gland. What's the function of the fluid? It protects the sperm against an acidic environment, increases motility, and provides nutrients as well. State one function of each of the following of part E. One function of the uterus. The uterus is a place for the fetus to develop. The uterus maintains pregnancy. The uterus assists in childbirth. The uterus allows for the implantation of the blastocyst. Don't use the word blastula anymore. It's not accepted anymore. And the fetus protects the fetus from infections. And the uterus protects the fetus. And then the uterus also provides a passage for the sperm cells between the vagina and the fallopian tubes. So anyone you must make sure you know. 223. Give the letter only of the organ where meiosis takes place in the male reproductive system. We know meiosis takes place in the testes, so D. Where does meiosis take place in the female? In G, the ovary. 2.2.4. Name the type of gametogenesis that takes place in the male reproductive system. Spermatogenesis. B. In the female reproductive system, oogenesis. 225. They want two functions of H. H is the birth canal, the vagina, serves as a birth canal, allows for the passage of menstrual blood, endometrial lining, amniotic fluid of the placenta, facilitates sexual intercourse, and secretes acid to prevent infections in the vagina. 226. Explain why it's necessary for part D, which is a testis, to be outside the body of the male. This is to make sure the testis temperature is correct, because you must remember, the sperm can only be produced at 2 degrees below body temperature. And can you see it says here, the temperature must be correct so healthy sperm can be produced. So don't forget to talk about healthy sperm. Right. 2.3. Right. Here you have the different hormone regulation on the female reproductive system. We have on the one side the pituitary levels, hormone levels, growth of the follicle, ovarian hormone levels, and thickness of the endometrium lining. 231. On which day does ovulation take place? If you look here, what day does ovulation take place? It takes place on day 14 or 15. Right. 232. Between which 2 days did menstruation take place? Or which days did menstruation take place? So there's menstruation. You could have said from day 0 to 7 or 0 to 6. 233. State one function of FSH during the menstrual cycle. That's easy. The menstrual cycle stimulates the development of the follicle from a primary follicle to a secondary follicle to a Graafian follicle. Okay. Here, the memo also wanted ovum development in the ovary, secretion of estrogen. So, here we're specifically talking about estrogen because they're asking the role of FSH in the menstrual cycle. So you say it produces the ovary, the follicle, which produces estrogen. Right, 2, 3, 4. State 2 functions of LH. What does luteinizing hormone do? Stimulates the bursting of the Graafian follicle to release the ovum, which is responsible for ovulation, and stimulates the conversion of the Graafian follicle into a corpus luteum. 235. Describe the functional relationship between progesterone and FSH. Now, an increase in progesterone level will inhibit FSH. Alright? Follicle stimulating hormone stimulates the development of the ovum and progesterone, which prepares the endometrium for implantation. 236. Did fertilization take place in this graph? As you can see, the corpus luteum is degenerating, so your answer is no. Then they ask you 2 reasons. The corpus luteum degenerated, as you can see there. The progesterone level is also decreasing. FSH is increasing, and the LH levels also decrease. Here they wanted any 2. That. Then you look, the diagram below shows a section through the human skin on 2 different days. 241. Give 2 visible reasons why on day 1 the environmental temperature would have probably been above 30 degrees. Now, how do you know this? Can you see from the picture? Can you see the blood vessels here are more dilated and there's sweat that's produced. So, the diameter of the blood vessel is wider, vasodilation occurred, more blood flows to the surface of the skin. Can you see there's more sweat secreted as well? Then, 242. A sports scientist wanted to find out how much water is lost by the human skin at different times of the day. The following results were obtained by measuring the average volume of water secreted by 40 healthy participants on a day similar to day 1. So there you have in your table, time of day, average water loss per milliliter per hour. Right. There's the time and the water loss. A. What time of day did the participants lose the most water? Can you see they lost the most water between 1300 hours and 1400 hours? Then they ask you, draw a histogram for the results in the table. So here in your heading, you have the average loss of water at different times of day, average loss of water in milliliters per hour, time of day, a histogram, all the bars are the same size and they're next to each other. You got a mark for the correct graph. The type of graph was the histogram, the title was correct, the labels for the X and Y axis was correct, the scale was correct, and all the bars were plotted correctly. Right. 3.1. Study the diagram below of a section through a human spinal cord and the neurons involved in a reflex arc. 3.1.1. Define a reflex action. It's a rapid automatic response to a stimulus. 3.1.2. Identify neurons A, B, and C. A, if you look at it, is a sensory neuron. The memo also accepted afferent neuron. B, you can see is the spinal cord, so it's an inter or connector neuron. Right? Here the memo also accepted association neuron or relay neuron. And C, you can see is the motor neuron. Here the memo also accepted efferent neuron. 3.1.13. Write down only the letter of the neuron which is probably damaged if a person can feel the stimulus but cannot respond. That is obviously C. The motor neuron will be damaged. Is able to walk but cannot detect any stimulus. That is obviously A, where the sensory neuron is damaged. And 3.1.4. Explain the significance of a reflex action in humans. It protects the human body against any damage or harm. Right. 3.2. An investigation was done to determine the effect of different amounts of thyroxine on the body weight in rats. The procedure was as follows. 45 healthy female rats of the same species were used. They were divided into 3 groups of 15 each. Groups A, B, and C. Their average body weight was determined and recorded. Group A was injected daily with methimazole, which inhibits the production of thyroxine in rats. Group B was injected daily with D-L-thyroxine, which stimulates the production of more thyroxine than under normal conditions in rats. Group C was given no treatment. All 3 groups were exposed to the conditions above for 2 months. The average body weights of all the groups were determined weekly. 3, 2, 1. In the investigation, identify the independent variable. Now, here on the top, that's your aim. In your aim, you have your dependent and your independent variable. So your independent variable here, can you see, is amount of thyroxine. Above, they asked you the dependent variable, what you're measuring, the body weight. And that's where you get your answer from. 322. State 3 factors that were kept constant during the investigation. It is here. They used the same number of rats. All the rats were of the same species. All groups were investigated for the same period of time. All rats were of the same gender. All groups were weighed after the same interval. So make sure you have the word same. 323. Which group rats A, B, or C would be expected to gain the most weight? Of course, it's going to be group A. And then they ask you, give a reason. Group A will have the lowest thyroxine levels, which will lead to a low metabolic rate. Then the energy from the diet is used slowly, and then more organic compounds are stored, which will lead to an increase in weight. 3 to 5. In which group of rats, A, B, or C, with the levels of thyroid-stimulating hormone in the blood below? B. Explain your answer. These rats have a high level of thyroxine in their blood, so therefore the pituitary gland will be not stimulated to secrete thyroid-stimulating hormone. Okay. Nice question. 3.3. The diagram below shows two pot plants A and B at the start of investigation. The plants were treated in the following ways. No changes were made to plant A. The apical bud of plant B was removed, as you can see. Each plant was covered with a box with a single opening, as shown in the diagram. 331. State the role of the boxes in the investigation. So can you see there's a hole on the one side? So what is the purpose of this box with the hole? To ensure unilateral light enters the plant. 332. Your memo also accepted to allow the plant to receive light from one direction only. 332. Name the plant hormone that is removed by cutting the apical bud. That's obviously auxin. 333. Tabulate two differences between plant A and B you would expect after 2 weeks. So of course, plant A, the stem will bend towards light. Okay. Plant B will remain straight, will not bend. Plant A, they will have does not have lateral branches, and B will have lateral branches. Plant A will grow taller and plant B will be shorter. And that's all because of the apical bud and auxin. That's the influence of the auxin. Right, 334. The diagram below shows plant B 7 days after being sprayed with gibberellins. Explain the effect that gibberellins had on the plant by referring to the changes observed in the diagram. Now can you see what will happen is you can see the plant is going to grow longer. But how? It caused the internodes to elongate, and that's how it grew longer. And the last one is the question 3, the essay. A ball was hit 50 meters high during a day-night match. Amla ran very fast to position himself under the ball and caught it against the bright floodlight. Describe the changes that occurred in Amla's eyes when he focused on the ball as it reached his hands, and describe the changes that occurred when he looked at the bright light. Also describe how he would maintain his balance if he were to fall as he caught the ball. So the first part is, of course, night and day, so that's the pupillary mechanism, right? So it was a day-night match. So of course, here it's a day-night match, so it's more day. So the circular muscles of the iris will contract, the radial muscles relax, and the pupil constricts, so to reduce or decrease the amount of light entering. That's the first part. Accommodation, right? He was focusing on the ball as it reached its hand, so that's near vision. So here, the ciliary muscle contracts. The suspensory ligaments become slackened or loosen. The tension on the lens decreases. The lens becomes more convex. The refractive power of the lens increases. And the clear image of the near object is focused on the retina. And then the last part, balance. The macula in the utriculus and sulculus and the cristae of the semicircular canals are stimulated. They generate an impulse which is transmitted through the auditory nerve to the cerebellum where they are interpreted. The impulses are transmitted via the motor neuron to the skeletal muscles. Well, thank you, grade 12, for watching this video. I hope you learned a lot. Join me and watch all my other videos as well.